Pokemon Hardgold and Soulsilver are probably the fan-favorite games of all time, so today I'm gonna see if I can beat a Heartgold Hardcore Nuzlocke using only flying types. The rules for this challenge are first off the standard Nuzlocke rules: any fainted Pokemon must be permanently boxed, only the first encounter in any area can be caught, and in this case the first flying type, and all Pokemon must be given a nickname. As for the Hardcore editions, battle mode must be played on set, no items can be used in battle except for held items, and you can't overlevel the next gym leader's highest level Pokemon. Now here's the list of possible flying type encounters in the game. So right off the bat, we can cross out Ledian and Skarmory since they're version exclusive to Soulsilver. In this case, I decided to play Pokemon Heartgold since we get access to Gligar and Mantine for a little bit better type coverage. Dragonite can also be crossed out since it evolves after level 50, which is past the level cap of the entire run anyway. And you might also have noticed that Gyarados is missing from the list. Honestly, Gyarados is the best Nuzlocke Pokemon by far because of its availability, stats, and Intimidate, so to make things a bit harder on myself, Gyarados is out as well. So my journey starts off with Professor Oak oversleeping, very unprofessional. I then name myself Axel and go to Professor Elm's lab to pick up a Pokemon. Since none of the starters are flying types at any point, I can't keep any of them, but I pick Cyndaquil since that leaves my rival with Totodile. Totodile's gonna learn Ice Fang later on, which is super effective against flying types, so at least my rival has the same advantage as he normally would. And after a very close call, I defeat the Ginger Kleptomaniac and get a look at its trainer card. And look, I didn't want to be childish and name him anything silly, so I went with what the card said. Now that we have Pokeballs, I run into the first encounter of the run on Route 29, a Pidgey. Now, Pidgey is readily available for everyone, but nobody really wants to use it if they don't have to, so I name it Ryanair and ditch my Cyndaquil. After that, I head to Route 46, where I can catch a Spearow, which I name Delta, and a Caterpie on Route 30, which I name Indigo. And on my way to Violet City, I also find a Zubat in the Dark Cave that I name EasyJet. And after just a little bit of switch training, Indigo evolves into Metapod and finally into Butterfree, so now we can actually use it since it's a flying type. And just before we can take on Faulkner, I go south of Violet City to pick up a Hoppip. I name it Air France, and with that, we already have a really solid team. Now look, Faulkner's always been a pushover. He's barely better than the trainers in his gym, so I lead with Indigo, who just learned Sleep Powder, and put Pidgey to sleep. After that, I one-hit KO him with a crit Confusion, and he sends out his Pidgeotto. Oh, how I'm shaking in my boots. I go for another Sleep Powder since I don't want to get hit by a super effective Gust, and it also gives me a safe switch into Delta. I'm not exactly sure how much damage I'm going to do with this thing, so I decide to go for Leer while he's still asleep. And after he wakes up, I decide it's time to start using Fury Attack to knock him out. And I sat here and contemplated for a while whether or not I should risk getting crit and knocked out, but in the end, I just decide to go for another Fury Attack. He stalls a little bit by using Roost, but in the end, Spearow gets the win. That's the first gym leader down, and we also get to prove who's the best flying type trainer in Johto. Take that, Faulkner. After the gym fight, I talk to Elm's assistant in the Pokemart and receive the Togepi egg that we're actually going to be able to use since it evolves into a flying type. And I also talk to the guy who delivers presents from your mom. He's going to be very important for the late game. In Union Cave, I have to fight a few hikers who have rock-type Pokemon, which could be very dangerous for my team, but the combination of Sleep Powder and the fact that Indigo has Confusion and the low special defense of rock-type Pokemon makes this a breeze. And much like the hikers, Team Rocket gets absolutely decimated by Indigo. Confusion rips through their poison types, which just proves how awesome an early game Pokemon Butterfree is. Now next up, we've got the Bug gym leader, Bugsy, and obviously Bug is weak against flying types, so this should be a breeze for us as well. And Scyther comes out first, and since it's kind of scary, I decide to put it to sleep with Indigo. And after I attempt to whittle it down a little bit with a few confusions, it wakes up and uses Focus Energy, which is a bit scary. Luckily for me though, I get the clutch chance to confuse with Confusion, and after getting some recovery from his Citrus Berry, I take the chance and go for a Poison Powder as he goes for a second Leer. Not wanting to risk it with 2 defense drops and a Focus Energy, I decide to switch into EasyJet, who takes a Quick Attack, but since he might get a crit on me, I decide to double switch into Delta to get some of that passive poison damage. But Delta takes way too much damage as well, so I triple switch into Ryanair, who tanks a critical hit Quick Attack and lives on 9 HP. Expecting Bugsy to use a potion, I take the chance to switch back into Indigo and use Stab Gust for as much damage as possible. Scyther luckily doesn't get a crit when using Quick Attack, although I would have lived it anyway, and a second Gust takes it out. At this point, Bugsy really doesn't have anything dangerous at all. Metapod and Kakuna aren't really a threat, but I decide to try to go for the Poison Powder on Metapod, forgetting that it has Shed Skin, so it just gets rid of it and goes for a Tackle. So a quick switch into EasyJet and a few Wing Attacks later nets me the second gym badge. And honestly, since we have flying types, I thought this would be a lot easier. Credit to Bugsy. Coming up after the gym here, we have the second fight with the rival, so I decide to level up Ryanair once so that he evolves into Pidgeotto. I mean, listen to me, he's a modest nature, he needs all the help he can get. The rival fight ends up being super uneventful, and he hasn't even learned Ice Fang yet. I then have to go get box fodder out of the box just so that I can cut down this one tree that's blocking my progression, and after talking to the headbutt guy, I bonk my head into a tree and run into a Hoot Hoot that I named Southwest. And as soon as I get to Goldenrod, I have to take the radio quiz in order to get the radio on my Pokegear, and it turns out Whitney has never beat this quiz. And think about it, Whitney's the gym leader of this town. She's an authority in this town. I guess the standards are really low in the Pokemon world. But while I'm in Goldenrod, I decide to do a little bit of shopping, and I get a few TMs for Protect. And with my newly acquired protection in hand, I go to Whitney's gym to take on the challenge. She starts out by sending out her Clefairy, which really only likes to use Metronome, so I put it to sleep a few times, and after she uses a couple super potions, I end up taking it out with Confusion. Next up is her Miltank, truly one of the most menacing creatures in this whole game that haunts each and every one of our childhood memories to this day. But after tanking a 4-time super effective rollout and putting Miltank to sleep just to burn off its Lumberry, I end up using Protect just to reset Rollout's power. And since I knew Rollout did 28 damage the first time, I was hoping for the same roll, and luckily I got it, so I managed to poison the Miltank. And the plan here is very simple. Each time I get low on HP, I'm just going to try to switch out to different team members and use Protect to whittle it down with Poison. And the only reason I'm confident that the AI isn't going to go for Milk Drink is because I'm at such low health that it sees the kill. And the next victim of Miltank's abuse is going to be Ryanair, so I use Protect for a few turns before I feel it's time to switch out into EasyJet. But the plan to continue stalling with EasyJet fails colossally since I forgot to teach it Protect, so I have to switch back into Ryanair and just hope that I can tank a hit. Luckily for me though, I live with a clutch 3 HP and take down the Miltank with poison damage, and that's badge number 3. No matter what you do, Whitney's always a really difficult gym battle, so I'm really glad that we have that behind us. On our way to Ecruteak City, Spearow levels up to level 20 against a random trainer, which means that it evolves into Fearow, which is a giant power boost for our team. But with my newly acquired Fearow, since I was playing on the right day to be able to play the bug catching contest, I decided to try my luck at catching a Scyther. And after almost losing Fearow as fast as I got it, I managed to catch Scyther and I name it Lufthansa. And you know what this game decides to do to me? Second place is caught a Scyther, okay, I must be the first place with a Caterpie? Listen up, school kid Kip, this is an outrage! Anyway, after probably the biggest defeat of my entire career, I check out Scyther, and it's a naive nature and unfortunately has Swarm as its ability. But after wiping up the pool of tears on my floor and doing some much-needed grinding, it's time to take on our rival for the 3rd time. And nothing super exciting happened during the battle except for the fact that I live on 1 HP when it uses Ice Fang. I'm starting to regret some of my decisions here, guys. And after winning the fight, we climb downstairs and see the legendary beasts hop around just before Yucine shows up with a speech about his existential angst about how we're much more special than he is. And while I was chomping down on the gym trainers with EasyJet, he levels up to level 22, which means he evolves into a Golbat. And since I took the time to run around for ages like a lunatic before we entered the gym, EasyJet evolves again into Crobat, which is a massive boost to the team. And while grinding for the gym, I run into a Farfetch'd which I named Skywest. And while grinding, I actually run into a shiny Rattata, which is either super lucky or super unlucky depending on how you see it. And since it's not a flying type, unfortunately we have to exterminate the rodent. Now next up we've got Morty, and you might think this would be a difficult matchup for me, but it really isn't since I have a lot of dark type moves, and a lot of my flying types are secondary normal types as well. So Ghastly goes down to 1 Pursuit, and Haunter goes down to the combination of 1 Pursuit and Curse. And when he sends out his Gengar, I know that I'm on a timer with Delta, so I decided to go to Protect just to scout what he's gonna do, and I really can't take a mean look since that means I'm guaranteed to get KO'd. So I switch into Crobat, and after using Confuse Ray, which really didn't matter at all since he never hits himself in Confusion, I tank a Shadow Ball and go for a few bites, which actually let me knock out the Gengar, and that nets me the 4th gym badge against Morty. 4 down, 4 to go. Since the only water type I can get is Mantine, and I don't have a water type, I have to catch a Krabby just so that I can actually surf and find it. And after running into more Tentacles and Tentacruels than I care to count, I finally run into Mantine and catch this thing, which I'm really excited about because I've never used this Pokemon before. The next challenge is going to be Chuck, if you can even call that a challenge since he has fighting types and on top of that only 2 Pokemon. And after he tries to pull some dirty evasion and healing strats, I take him down with a few wing attacks, no problem. Next up is his Poliwrath, and I'm not super worried about this thing, but I decided to go for Confuse Ray just to be on the safer side, and he actually hits himself in Confusion, so it works out in the end. The next turn my luck starts to wear thin, and he goes for a Hypnosis which actually hits, so I switch over into Lufthansa, and I decide to just go for Wing Attack thinking that 2 of them will probably be enough to take it out, but he gets the Para on the Body Slam, which isn't too good for Lufthansa. So another quick pivot into Delta, and a few aerial aces later, and we have the 5th badge. Chuck, you never stood a chance. And with my 5th badge in hand, it's time to head over to the Lake of Rage, take down the red Gyarados, and then help Lance with his Team Rocket issue. I then watch a man take a Hyper Beam to the face, and come to the realization that there are no hospitals for people in this game. But now that I have Surf, I realize that I can go through Union Cave to the secret area in the Ruins of Alph where I can actually find Natu. I catch it and fittingly name it after Spirit Airlines. And after a bit of grinding, Natu evolves, which is pretty awesome since I've never used a Xatu in a run before. Before taking on Price, I decide to go to Goldenrod and teach Xatu Light Screen and Reflect. And this is going to be key since ice types are a huge threat to my team. And Price starts out with Seal, which I take out pretty easily with a few Shadow Balls. Next he sends in his Dugong, which is the biggest threat to my team, and he goes for Aurora Beam, which does a massive amount of damage, but I limit what he's going to be able to do with it by using Light Screen. I then forget all about the fact that he has Ice Shard, but I actually live on 8 HP and manage to fire off a Wish. Feeling pretty confident about my chances to take a hit, and knowing that my wish is going to come true, I send in Easy Jet. Knowing Dugong's physical attack is pretty lacking, I decide to go for Wing Attack to gauge damage, and seeing that it doesn't do too much, I decide to go for Confuse Ray. And in my head, I actually miscounted the Light Screen turns here, so I thought I was safe from an Aurora Beam, but if he hadn't hit himself in confusion, I could have very easily gone down to 1. Luckily though, that doesn't happen, and I get to keep my Crobat, and next up he sends in Piloswine. Luckily for me, we've got Mantine in the back that we recently caught, and so I tank a Blizzard, and after just a couple surfs, we have our 7th gym badge. I seriously thought this would be way harder, and that we'd sustain way more casualties. We'll see how long we can keep up this deathless streak. And after Price's gym, I head straight over to Olivine City to fight Jasmine, who's another big threat since she has 2 Magnemites on her team with Thunderbolt. Luckily, I know she really likes to start off her battles by using Thunder Wave, so I use that to my advantage by using Synchronize and paralyzing it back. This way I can take a Thunderbolt with Lufthansa and get healed right back up with Wish. I knew I couldn't take it out with Rock Smash, so Paralysis felt crucial, but I actually get a crit, so it didn't matter in the end. And since I'm not paralyzed, I assume the next Magnemite's gonna go for Thunder Wave, so I decided to get as much damage off as I possibly can with a Rock Smash. And now that I don't have Light Screen anymore, there's a possibility that he might take me out with Thunderbolt, so I end up having to chance the Rock Smash with Paralysis, and he actually misses a Supersonic, and I don't get paralyzed, so it works out in the end. A little bit too close for comfort, to be honest, but next she sends in her Steelix, and I have the perfect answer for it in Mantine once again. And I thought I could take it out with 1 Surf, but Mantine's not exactly the strongest Pokemon, so I have to eat a really powerful Rock Throw and then retaliate back with another Surf for our 7th gym badge. Once again, I got really lucky, and I have no idea how I got through that with no casualties whatsoever. After nearly getting a heart attack from both of those battles, we have to deal with some Team Rocket shenanigans again, and they're way too underleveled as always, but this guy Petrol actually has 5 Coughings and a Wheezing that all know self-destruct, so could be a potential run killer for any Nuzlocke. And while I was doing the mandatory ice puzzle they seem to think needs to be in every Pokemon game, I had the chance to catch Delibird, but I didn't do it because, actually, you know what? I don't need to justify why I didn't catch Delibird, it's Delibird. As soon as I got to Blackthorn City, however, I did go south and catch myself a Gligar, and I named it Air Emirates. I also took the chance to run around in this grass forever and evolve Air France into Skiploom and then finally into Jumpluff. And with Air France on our team, it's time to finally take on the 8th gym leader, and she starts out by sending out Gyarados, and my master plan here with Air France is to use a combination of Sleep Powder, Leech Seed, and then U-turn out into something that can better deal with Gyarados. And Claire's Gyarados really isn't scary at all when compared to something like Lance's Gyarados, since it doesn't have Ice Fang or anything like that, it just has Dragon Rage and a bunch of other moves, so I get to set up both my screens with Xatu. And after doing a ton of switching around to keep this thing asleep as much as possible, I whittle it down with Leech Seed eventually. I then try to go for Sleep Powder on Dragonair, which just shrugs it off with Shed Skin, which I once again forget about. But I try again with a few Sleep Powders, and after a while he does actually stay asleep, so I can safely go for Leech Seed, and then U-turn out into Pacific Airlines. Unfortunately, I get hit by a Thunder Wave here, which really limits my ability to hit a Blizzard on this thing, but very fortunately my Blizzard connects and she sends out her next Dragonair. And I decide to risk the Blizzard on this thing too, knowing that I can take a hit, and so after tanking a Dragon Pulse, I hit it with a Blizzard, but it's not quite enough to take it out, and after getting punished for trying a 3rd time, I decide it's time to switch out, so I go into our boy EasyJet, who knocks it out with a Wing Attack, and that's when she sends out her big boss Kingdra. But not wanting to switch something into this thing and expecting to be able to take a hit, I try to go for the Poison with Poison Fang, but unfortunately I don't get it even after trying twice. And right here, I expected to go for another Hydro Pump, so I decide to switch into Air France, who actually tanks a Dragon Pulse really well and can then put it to sleep and go for the same Leech Seed strat as for Gyarados. After stalling for a bit, I decide to go for Poison Powder instead of Sleep Powder just to whittle it down a bit faster. And at this point, I'm just expecting Leech Seed to carry me and heal me up enough to take some hits, so I take a Dragon Pulse first, and then I actually live a Clutch Hyper Beam on 4 HP. I was really expecting to lose Air France here, but I'm very glad I didn't, since it's going to come in very clutch towards the end of the run. And so now that I've completed the gym challenge, I head over to Whirl Islands to talk to this guy who doesn't let me through for whatever reason. After Googling around and not realizing why he's not moving, I realized that I used to play Soul Silver all the time as a kid, and that I'm now playing Heartgold, and I'm a certified dummy. Now, Ho-Oh is actually a flying type, so it is eligible to be on our team, but unfortunately it's a legendary, so I use the Smoke Ball to run away from it. Sorry, Ho-Oh, maybe next time. And after picking up the TM for Earthquake for our Gligar, it's time for us to take on the Pokemon League. And so for the Elite Four, the level cap is the highest level Pokemon in the E4, which happens to be Houndoom at level 47. But Will here is kind of out of luck since his Pokemon are pretty low level, and his Xatu gets taken down by 2 Night Slashes. His Jinx then gets O-Code, and his second Xatu gets the exact same treatment as the first. But since Lufthansa is a little bit low at this point, I decide to switch out against Executor, who I'm not sure I can OHKO, and I go into Easy Jet. And unsurprisingly, it's just a clean one-hit KO with Fly. Unsure what to do about Slowbro at first, I look up its moveset, and it likes to use Curse, but it has no physical moves to use. So a quick switch into Air France and employing some cheesy stall strats, and an eternity later, I finally decide to U-turn out into Xatu. The first Elite Four member is usually not that difficult, but this was probably one of the easiest fights in the entire run, to be honest. In the end, Xatu just 2-shots with Shadow Ball, so I could have done that first, I guess. Next up is Koga, who has a lot of bug and poison types, and I'm not expecting this to be too difficult, and Fly takes out both Ariados and Venomoth right off the bat. Then comes Fortress, which is a steel type, so it's kind of difficult for my flying types to deal with. So once again, I do the thing I do when I don't know what to do, and I send in Jumpluff and go for Leech Seed. I then try to come up with a strategy, and he's using Toxic Spikes, which really doesn't matter since I'm using all flying types anyway. But after finally hitting a Sleep Powder, I decide that my best bet is to go into Gligar, who can probably do a lot of damage with its Stab Earthquake. And so since Fortress is still asleep, I decide to take the opportunity to set up with a few Swords Dances, and as soon as he wakes up, I just knock him out with the Earthquake, and unfortunately he doesn't send in Muck here, he sends in Crobat instead. And this Crobat is really annoying, it likes to double team a lot, so I decide to go for a Quick Attack to get some quick damage in. I then miss my second Quick Attack as he goes for Wing Attack, but luckily I get a crit on the third one, so a single Earthquake to knock out Muck, and that's it for Koga. A bit lucky with that crit against Crobat, but I'm pretty confident we could have pulled it off with no losses anyway. Next up is Bruno, who starts out with Hitmontop that just gets clean knocked out by a Fly from Crobat. He then sends in Onix, so I have to switch out into Emirates, and he goes for Sandstorm, which I now know only gives special defense boost to rock types, thank you very much. And I start setting up Swords Dances with Emirates again to see if I can sweep Bruno as well. And Onix obviously gets knocked out by a super effective +6 Stab Earthquake from Gligar, and Hitmonchan suffers the same fate. Hitmonlee, however, somehow manages to be faster, and he uses Swagger, which makes me hit myself in confusion, and I live on only 9 HP. So I have to switch out into Easy Jet, who can take it down with a Fly, but I didn't exactly get the sweep with Gligar like I planned. So now we have to come up with a different plan for Machamp. And honestly, I was a little bit afraid of what this thing was going to do to me, but it decides to go for Revenge as I go for Fly, and I get a crit, which knocks it out. I don't think it would have if I didn't get the crit, but hey, luck is luck. Finally, we've got Karen to contend with, and with her Umbreon, she can be pretty annoying, and yeah, I know, okay? Insert annoying Karen joke right here. And after stalling for a few turns, I decide to use U-turn and switch into Lufthansa, who instantly gets confused. So I pivot switch into Gligar, and I get a little bit too greedy by using a Swords Dance, and I get confused. I probably should have just gone for Earthquake right off the bat. So that means I have to switch back into Lufthansa, but luckily for me, 2 X-Scissors is enough to get rid of the annoying Umbreon once and for all. She then sends in Murkrow, which I figure I can take out with 2 Wing Attacks, but it actually does a substantial amount of damage with Pluck and would have destroyed me with a crit, so I'm lucky that didn't happen. Next, she sends in her ace, Houndoom, which can actually be really scary if it sets up a nasty plot. So I send in Pacific, who tanks a Dark Pulse and then retaliates with a Surf, but it's not quite enough to take it out. And unfortunately, this gets me to really low health, so I have to switch out into something that's going to be faster than Houndoom, and I switch in Easy Jet, who can just take it out with a Wing Attack. Then she sends out her Gengar, which has a really garbage moveset, so I switch into Air France, which it really can't touch, so I can set up another Leech Seed. Once it's seated, I put it to sleep so I can safely switch back into Crobat. And as you would expect, Crobat knocks it out with 1 bite, and the only thing she has left is Vileplume, which gets totally annihilated by a Fly, and that's the Elite Four down. I then remember I've picked up 3 rare candies during my journey, and in hopes of it making a difference, I give them all to Mantine. This is it, the final battle to decide it all. One man, one mission, to become the very best like no one ever was. And for that to become a reality, I devised a master plan that needed to go exactly right. And so to start off with, I put Gyarados to sleep with Air France and switched out into Easy Jet. I knock it out with a combination of a couple of bites and an electric type natural gift. This is the battle where those berries that Mom bought with our money really matter. Next up, Lance sends out Aerodactyl, which is by far the biggest threat to my team. I need Air France to get in safely to put it to sleep, so I need to sacrifice something. And so I send in Emirates, who's the only one who can take a few hits and do some chip damage back. It's then time for Air France to put it to sleep, but it actually doesn't outspeed Aerodactyl, so before the battle, I gave it a Choice Scarf just for this one purpose. Thanks again, Mom. I then have to switch in Pacific and hope and pray that it stays asleep for 2 more turns, otherwise I straight up just lose the battle here and now. Luckily for me it does, and I take it out with a Surf, and that is a big sigh of relief. Then he sends out his first Dragonite, which does have Thunder, and I did give Pacific a berry just for this purpose, and I did calc it so I knew he'd live, but luckily he just misses, and I take it out with a Blizzard. Honestly, this battle relies on so much RNG, it's really uncomfortable. Second Dragonite comes out, and I don't want to take any chances, so I sack off Easy Jet for a clean switch to Air France so I can put it to sleep. You served with honor, Easy Jet. But this means I can put it to sleep with Sleep Powder, switch into Pacific, and safely take it out with a Blizzard. It's really making me nervous to have to use moves with accuracy in the 70s to be able to win this, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Once again, we need a safe switch into Air France, so someone else has to go, and this time it's Spirit Airlines. You've served us bravely as well, comrade. But in the end, this allows us to put the final Dragonite to sleep, and we can safely switch into Pacific, who takes it out with a couple of Blizzards. Luckily, I hit Blizzard both times here as well, otherwise this could have gone very differently. We're not quite out of the woods yet since he does have his Charizard left, but we do have the perfect Pokemon to counter it here in Pacific, and so I use a few Surfs, and finally, the Charizard goes down, and we claim the champion title. Oh my goodness, that was probably the most intense champion battle I've ever fought, but in the end, we pulled through. We managed to beat Pokemon Hardgold Hardcore Nuzlocke using only flying types. And guys, I just want to thank you all for all the support I got on the last video. That was really encouraging to see. And if you want to see more runs like this, remember to like the video, remember to hit that subscribe button, and let me know what game you want to see me try a Hardcore Nuzlocke variant of next. I've been thinking about doing Ultra Sun and Moon. And if you happen to be into Minecraft, you could check out my latest Minecraft video where I build a massive castle. But that's over on my other channel, and if all you want to see is Pokemon on this channel, then I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.